Hey everyone. So today we're going to figure out how intelligent will your spouse be? And also we'll be finding out how good were they in school? How did they behave in school? What kind of a student were they in school? Were they like a shy kid? Were they the type of person who raises their hand to answer every single question? Are they the type of person who like only studies 5 minutes before the test and still gets like a 95%? Right? So we'll see like how intelligent and how well your spouse did in school growing up. And this is a very fascinating technique, I'd say. So, if you would like to know everything about your spouse, check out the link in the description to book a consultation with us. You can find out everything such as where you'll meet them, where you can meet them, when, and their appearance, their family, their wealth, all these details. If you want to know every single detail about your spouse, you can book a consultation. Currently, everything's on sale. So yeah, and please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. So with this technique, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at your D9 chart, right? So, and we're gonna look at, we know that the seventh house is your spouse's ascendant in your D9 chart. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look fifth house from here, which ends up being this house, the 11th house. Right? So this is your spouse's intelligence and how well they were doing in school, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to put all the planets here and see how they all perform here. And if there are no planets here, we'll also see what happens in that case as well. So yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So let's say if the planet Sun is in this 11th house of your D9. What we could say is that your spouse was intelligent because Surya naturally is an intelligent planet. And they were very bright and they were able to understand concepts very easily in school. And actually, even till now, they're able to understand concepts and like grasp things very easily. So, very intelligent people. Um, these people in school, these are the type of people who didn't mind doing presentations. Actually, these are the people who actually enjoyed doing presentations and said, "Can I go first in presentations?" This is especially true if Sun is exalted. If Sun is exalted here, your spouse would have volunteered to go first and get it done with, and then they would have said, first of all, they would have said, "Yeah, getting it done first means that you don't have to worry for the rest of the day." And they would also think too, they would say that going first, there's nobody else to compare me with, so it's like a fresh, clean slate. Um, so yeah, these people they really loved going first, and they loved being in the spotlight here. Like they're comfortable being in the spotlight here, and that's why they would volunteer to to do this. They definitely weren't shy in school. So yeah, the only way that they wouldn't like to like be in the spotlight is if Sun is debilitated, then they would probably hate it. Or if Sun is with Ketu, or aspected by Ketu or Saturn. One of these combinations, then these are the exceptions. Then they don't like being in the spotlight or being seen. But otherwise, Sun itself, very intelligent. Um, Yeah, these are people who, they worked hard in school and they like their results showed. They would do well in the tests and stuff that they would do. And generally also in life, like they're known as people who like they're not known as geniuses, but they're known to be pretty bright, intelligent. Like people will say like, "Oh yeah, he has a good head on his shoulders. He's very smart. He knows how to take care of himself." So it's that type of intelligence. And what's kind of good about the sun here is that this is a good intelligence where they could go both ways. They could they could learn things in the classroom, like all the concepts, and they could also apply it very well here because Sun is a nice planet where it could do both. It could do the learn the theoretical knowledge and apply it as well. So that's just really great. Sun here is a great placement, and um, yeah. So that's Sun. Let's move on to Moon. Now, Moon here is uh, a little bit more of an interesting situation because Moon itself, it is an intelligent planet. Now, not necessarily known for its intelligence like other planets that we're going to cover, but it is intelligent. But I would say that this is a lot more dependent on the sign and aspects on this moon. So here's a very interesting thing. If moon is exalted here, or if moon is in its own house, you'll actually see that your spouse went to a very high ranking school or a very well known school. Like they would have went to a school that would have been known for its reputation and for being like a really high class school. And it would have been a school that's like clean, well maintained, even if it is old. It would still be very clean and nice inside. Good quality stuff you would see in the school. Um, in terms of actual knowledge, these people, it, I think for them to be really intelligent, this moon would need to be like to be standout intelligent. This moon would have to be aspected by let's say Jupiter or Mercury uh for them to really grow in intelligence here. Because this is just moon alone is just like average intelligence, I would say. Like nothing special, but nothing bad either. Nothing like yeah, so it's just kind of average here. So because it's so highly dependent on aspects here, like the Jupiter and Mercury would make this like even if Jupiter and Mercury were conjunct, then they would be extremely intelligent. And it also goes the other way around. If there are planets like Ketu or Saturn, either one sitting with Moon, then this person wouldn't like school as much or probably didn't try that much or didn't care for it. Right? So Moon is one of those planets where it's very dependent on the sign. Like let's say for example, if Moon was in Sagittarius, Jupiter's sign, then yeah, they would do very well in school. They'd be considered very intelligent. Um, so yeah, I would say this Moon alone, if you had just Moon alone, this is kind of just average. But yeah, average intelligence, but wherever the school was, it was actually a pretty good quality school and it had a pretty good reputation as well. Unless this moon is debilitated. Actually, this is an interesting case. So this moon is debilitated. They're actually always anxious to go to school. Like school caused them a lot of anxiety or a lot of stress, and they were actually just very glad to get school over with. Like school was something that gave them a lot of stress, and they definitely were not happy being in school if Moon is debilitated or is with K2 or Saturn. So yeah. Uh, so that's Moon. So here's Mars. So if Mars is here, this is a pretty interesting combination, I would say. So the way I'd sum this up is that they're only as good as the instructions that they receive. That's how I would put this. So they would only do well in school if they had a good teacher. Like we all know like teachers who are like god awful or who just don't want to be there. If they end up with a teacher like this, they're not going to do well. But if they end up with a teacher who's genuinely like good and who genuinely cares about what they're doing and that cares about the students, then this person would do very well in the school. And you see, the reason for this is because Mars is a planet who is very good at taking orders. And so it depends on the quality of those orders and instructions. So if if they're given bad instructions, they're not going to perform well in school. But if they're given good instruction, good, clear instructions, they'll perform well because that's what they're doing. That's Mars is an army planet, a soldier. What they're there to do is to take orders, take instructions, and perform the task and to go out with it, right? So that's where they'll be very good, right? Like they're extremely good at taking orders. Like if you were to tell them a list of things that you want them to do, this is actually really good. This is where they'll excel. Like if you tell them, okay, I want you to go do this thing first, just in like everyday life. Like this is how their mind works, that um they're able to like if you give them a list of instructions to do, they'll do it and they'll do it pretty well because they're good at following orders and instructions. Now, where they kind of struggle is when you know those teachers when they give you let's say like math homework and they'll give you a bunch of questions, but then when the test rolls around and it's like questions you've never seen before, at like these are questions that your homework would have never prepared you for. These guys would struggle very hard with this because again, they're good at doing what they've been trained for. But if you give them something that goes so far beyond this, they're going to struggle with it. Uh, only very few planets would do well in that situation when a teacher gives you test questions that are like completely different from like the lecture or from the homework. Like very few planets could deal with that, and we'll get to those planets. So yeah, Mars would struggle in that case, but something else is actually they catch on to things very quickly. Like if you give them a topic and you explain it to them, like they could grasp the idea very quickly. If you just give them like one or two examples and have them work through it, they'll actually be able to catch on very quickly. As long as you like work out one example with them, like they could reproduce it and copy it because like they're good at this. This is what they're good at doing. Right, again, think of how an army or soldier functions. They see somebody else do it, like run through a drill, and then they have to catch on to it quickly, right? So that's what they're good at. That type of learning where, they have to learn something quickly. And actually, it's good. They're actually very good at learning under pressure. So, these are the type of people who they don't mind. In class when you're given like 3 weeks to do a project, these are the people who don't mind getting it done in one day. It's actually kind of funny. I know people like that where they could definitely do it in one day and they work very well under stress. And actually, this is where they work the best in under stressful situations. The day before something is due, like an essay is due, this is when they work very well. So yeah. Yeah, as well, these people, in terms of school, these people just wanted to finish their homework as fast as possible. They would like speed run their homework. Um, so yeah, another thing that's interesting with this, these people generally don't care of the quality of school that they go to. You know how some people, they're like they really care like to go to like a private school or a those high schools that are like, I don't know if there's private high schools, but they're like high schools that are have like a really good reputation. These people don't care for those type of private schools or schools like that. Because you know what they'll say? They'll say knowledge is knowledge. Like as long as you learn how to do this thing, like what's the difference learning it from a private school versus a public school? It's all, there's only one way to add one plus one. Like that's their thought process, right? So they don't really care about the quality of the school. They just want to get it done and just like learn it. They don't care how they learn it. They just saying, okay, I need this knowledge. Let me go to this college, this university, and this school, and that's it. Let me go to the. They don't even mind going to the cheapest school. Again, as long as they get the knowledge. So yeah. So that's Mars, and actually, before I move on, the planets that kind of help Mars here, uh, first is Jupiter. See, Jupiter will actually slow down Mars here and be like, okay, like yeah, you can learn this no like one plus one from any school. We have to think about it like Jupiter would give Mars this wisdom to think beyond and be like, okay, but after this, you're going to be like a surgeon, and the best chance of getting into school where they accept surgeons is very like private schools or very high class schools here. So Jupiter gives Mars um this foresight to see more into the future here. And this is also strange as well. Like well, Jupiter wasn't strange, but actually a strange one is Saturn actually. So if Saturn's with Mars, then it makes Mars think twice about um it makes Mars think twice about all the decisions because Mars would rush all these decisions. Because you see, Mars alone, when they write tests, they get it over with as soon as possible, and these are like the first people to get up and leave. Not necessarily because they're the smartest person, but because they wrote the fastest. Like they're able to write the fastest. That's the only reason they're leaving first. Um, And actually, as a consequence of this, these people don't often look over their work. So, like when they would write their answers for their tests, they're not the type of person who double checks their answers. So these are most often the people who would make mistakes by entering like a wrong number in your calculator, for example, because they don't double check their work. So they would have never known if they like miswrote something or entered the wrong number, like in a calculator or whatever device they're using. So yeah. But Saturn, when Saturn's with Mars, Saturn gives Mars this patience, which is something that Mars very much needs. Now, I would say probably the better combination is if Saturn just aspects Mars and not sits with Mars. Like if Saturn aspects this Mars, then it gives this person a bit more patience and they actually think they give a lot more thought before submitting their final answers. And same thing, even their thought process, even when they're older, when they make decisions, they're gonna think about it more if Saturn aspects this Mars. So yeah, that's Mars. Um, on to Mercury. Okay, and now Mercury and the next couple of planets coming up, this is really uh the planets that excel the most in this fifth house. Or not this well, fifth from seventh house, which yeah, they excel here. Uh you see, because this really you see Mercury here really gives your spouse such powerful intelligence and such a powerful brain too, and such powerful like thinking power. And it's because Mercury, you see, the way that Mercury learns is they're very good at copying and mimicking, right? Because you see, Mercury is the planet that represents little kids, like a child. And think about how little kids learn, right? Like little toddlers, they're not able to speak, but they learn some of the most crucial things of our life. They learn language, they learn how to walk, and they even learn, right? They learn how to talk as well. And how do they do this? It's all from watching others. So just from watching others, they're able to catch on very quickly. And that's where Mercury excels here. So your spouse would be extremely intelligent and very quick to copy somebody. Like they could watch somebody do like solve a math problem and then they could do it themselves very quickly. Like they don't need to rewatch or anything. Like just like that, they've like downloaded this information and they've got it down. So extremely good. And you know another thing that's and like this is why they're so good at school. Um you see something with school is that school really rewards people who can memorize. And really think through that. Like think about any history test or any geography test. A lot of your tests is just a matter of memorizing facts. Especially like multiple choice type of things. There's a lot of times where it's just memorize a date that happened, when did World War II start or when did it end? It's a lot of memory type of things, right? And that actually goes for a lot of subjects in school. They are very memory based, right? And it kind of school, it doesn't reward the people who are bad at memorizing, right? So Mercury here is actually the king of memorization. Like the king, queen, like they're so good at memorizing facts. And this is part of the reason why they get like 100% on all their tests because they could look over a test or they could look over all their notes and have it memorized for tomorrow's test. So they're really good at that. And yeah, that's why they excel so well at school. Um, yeah. So that's part of the reason, and you see, Mercury is also another planet that's very good at mathematics. So like in any type of learning really, but so they're good at like calculations, though this happens a bit more if Mercury's in like Gemini, Virgo, or even sitting in a Martian sign like this. It gives Mercury like the technical ability to do mathematical calculations, things like advanced calculus, those type of things. Um, right? So Mercury does extremely well here. You know what type of student they were? These are the people, and this is especially true of Mercury's in its own signs. Um, these are the type of people who, before a test or exam, they make flashcards. You know, like those notes. Um, they would write their notes on a card with like their answers. So these people have a lot of different memorization tricks, and they would even tell you a lot of things as well. Um, I remember, um, like, even the way that they learn mathematics and like some physics calculations, it's by memorizing tricks that they're able to solve a lot of these questions. Um, so that's what makes Mercury very good. I had an example in my mind as well. Um, like what I learned in school, like this is a good example of this. Like here, it's a little triangle, and we all know the equation. Well, both maybe you might know it. V is equal to IR, like voltage is equal to current times resistance. I remember learning a technique in school where people would memorize the formula like this. So it would be like, I think it was like this. I forgot how it is. Maybe like this, something like this. I don't know, but it was like some type of memorization trick where uh, they would do some tricks like this to memorize the formula and how to get it. So I remember, I think like they would rearrange a V's like this. So I think, oh, it would be, uh, so I think it would be like this, maybe. I don't know, something like that. But they would have a lot of memorization tricks to figure out how they're supposed to do things. Oh, especially they'd be, you know what they'd be good at is like biology, like things like anatomy where they have to memorize like 100 things. That's what they really excel at. Um, and you know something else with Mercury here. Like I would say Mercury's the one of the kings of the fifth uh kings of education, just because his ability to learn and pick up things so quickly. Even you'd be amazed with your spouse because these are the people who pick up things so fast. Like they can mimic things very quickly and very effectively. Like let's say if your spouse is a musician and have something like this. These are the type of people who like their intelligence is so strong here. They could listen to a song one time and then like pick like they could figure out the key and like mimic the song, like play it for them, like figure out the notes and where it needs to be without like having actual sheet music. So yeah, that's what's very strong about them. Their ability to pick things up is unmatched with Mercury. So yeah, now this isn't true if Mercury sits with like Ketu or is in Scorpio or is with Saturn. Anyone, because all of these will slow down Mercury, and Mercury does not work well with these. And this also works if Saturn, like either Saturn or K2 aspect Mercury as well. These guys slow Mercury down. Otherwise, Mercury like works very quickly with this stuff. So yeah, your spell's extremely brilliant, extremely fast. Um, yeah. So that's Mercury. Next is Venus. Now, I really like Venus in this house. You see, your spouse is naturally like very, very smart. And these people, like, they're able to learn things very quickly and they're naturally very wise. So, and the reason for this is because Venus is naturally a guru, is normally a teacher. So, Venus could pick up information extremely quickly, and your spouse could pick it up very quickly. But you see, this is very different than Mercury, because Mercury, for example, is memorizing, but Venus actually learns the information inside and out, right? And actually, here's something that's interesting with Venus is that when Venus is here, they're like with their test scores, they're working so that they could achieve their goal. So let's say if these people need to achieve like a 85%, you know, in this class, let's say that's what they're working towards, they would know exactly how to do this. They would say, okay, to get an 85%, they need to do well on these upcoming next three tests. They need to get at least a 95% on these next three tests to be able to maintain or get an 85% in the course overall. Um, so yeah, they're very clever with these things too. They know how to achieve the goal that they're striving for. Like they think about this stuff. They're like, okay, to get into the university program, they need at least a 75% average. So they would say like, okay, they know how to do this and that. Like they know like they're like, okay, I need to study this much. And then with this amount of effort, then they know how to get this. So they know how to work towards their goal and to not overwork themselves. Like they're gonna be like, um, yeah, they're gonna be very good at doing things like that. Those type of calculations. And you know something else with Venus here, when they, let's say if they're very interested in learning a topic, they would very much like to learn all the details with this, like learn all the every single like step in performing what they need to do. So like for example, let's say, oh, this is a good example. Let's say they're in like a chemistry class and they're about to perform like a lab and you know like an experiment in the lab. What they would do, they would write down their procedure beforehand, and in their procedure, they have to know every single detail. They'd be like, okay, I need to fill this vial with, I don't know, this much water. And they would need to know the exact amount. So they would say, okay, I need 200 milliliters of water to in this vial here. And I'd be performing this 5 times. So 5 times 200 milliliters would give, you know, 1,000. So they would know that, and then they'd be like, okay, so now that I have this, now the next step is pour this water into this Erlenmeyer flask, you know, this specific flask, and I need it to go in this specific flask only because this shape will work with this type of reaction. No other flask would work well here. So you see, like they're very detail oriented, right? That's where I'm going with it. They have to know all the specifics with what they're doing and all the steps. Um, so these are the type of people as well when they're learning. Let's say if let's say if they're learning like a physics problem, they need to know like, okay, first step, you need to do this and this. Now, once you've calculated, I don't know, the kinetic energy, like now we need to calculate the potential energy. Once we have potential energy, now what do we do in the next step? Like they have a systematic way of learning and they need to know like the deepest details. Every single number must be reported. Every single step must be reported when they're doing things. And this is especially true um, if Venus is with Mercury as well, then they're very keen on knowing the steps and procedures. Um, so yeah, these people are very knowledge, and because of this, they end up being very knowledgeable in their subjects because they know the minute details. So that's the thing that makes them very powerful in education. Um, So yeah, these people do very well, and they have a very, very thorough understanding of what they're doing, especially if Venus is exalted or in its own signs, especially like Libra, for example, and Jupiter signs, right? So it makes them extremely powerful with knowledge and knowing these things. And actually, they become in school. These were the type of people who would would teach people like these steps on how to solve a problem. Like they wouldn't. These are not the people who would give like an overview of how to solve it. These are the people who would give uh, like step one, step two, step three on how to solve every single problem. That's how they go about it. So yeah. But yeah, extremely knowledgeable, and they teach people. They're actually like teaching people because people see how smart that they are. A lot of people approach them and be like, "Hey, could you show me how to do this? How do you think about this? Like, how do you remember how to do these things?" You see, so that's the type of person that they are. Like how do you solve these difficult issues? That's what this person is very good at doing. Again, now be careful. If this Venus is with Saturn or Ketu, Taurus and Scorpio, this this slows down this Venus. This they aren't as powerfully minded in these cases here. Now you see, if Venus is just with Saturn, then they become a lot better at more practical things. Like they're not going to be so much of theoretical knowledge, like things you learn in classroom. These people are going to be like uh, very good at hands-on practical task, and they'll tell you the steps they need to do to perform this manual task here. But yeah, there's always exceptions here, so be very careful with aspects and conjunctions. If Jupiter sits with Venus, now here you got probably your spouse is like the most brilliant person ever. Like this is especially if either Jupiter is exalted or if Venus is exalted. Either one is extremely powerful, and just know you've got the smartest person in the world like just sitting right next to you. Extremely bright, but they use their knowledge to share with others and to help people. They're not doing it for selfish gain. They're so brilliant that they use it to teach others how to improve themselves. Because here you have both the guru planets, Jupiter and Venus. And so they share their knowledge and they want everybody else to succeed. So that's how they are. Very, very smart people. And next is Jupiter. So if Jupiter is here, this is very you're this is probably my favorite planets in this in fifth from the seventh house. So my favorite education planet, I'd say. And you see, Jupiter blesses your spouse here in this placement with super incredible intelligence. They're naturally very bright. These are these are the people that you could just look at them and tell that they're extremely knowledgeable. Like they're so smart. These are the people who are like, even if they never met them, they're like, oh yeah, your spouse is gonna like nail this test. They're gonna get 100%. They're gonna do so well on it. So everybody knows that these people are intelligent, and the reason is because there's just a there's just a natural wisdom that's there in their appearance uh, there. So extremely intelligent. And these people, the way that they like to learn, they do not memorize things. This is not their cup of tea. They prefer learning the subject inside and out. And they don't mind if it takes them a lot longer. Because you see, like Mercury picks up things super fast. And Mercury will learn things much faster than Jupiter, but the difference is that Mercury will forget this knowledge in like a week or two. But Jupiter takes his time. As a guru, this Jupiter takes his time to learn the information inside and out and to get such a thorough understanding of the mechanics involved with every subject that's being learned. So this is one thing when they learn something and once they get it down, they know it better than anybody else. That's how smart they are. Now, there's actually a difference here with Jupiter and Venus because they're both gurus, but they learn in different ways. You see, Jupiter learns the essence of the topics, and Jupiter learns the what is the main idea or the main way of solving this, like these math problems or doing these questions, for example. And because of this, Jupiter is able to uh, learn the knowledge in such an inside out way that he could apply his mind to, like, he could take the essence of this, and let's say if your teacher throws a curveball, right? You know those teachers in the test where they teach one thing in the lecture and then on the test it's like something completely different. These are the people who, even if the test is something completely different than the homework in the lecture, they have such a thorough understanding of how this topic works and these equations work that they could still apply it, and they know how to vary their like they know how to apply it even when the situation changes, right? So they're actually, the word I would say is they're very adaptable to this. You see, that's something that Mercury doesn't have here, because Mercury memorizes all of its knowledge, and the issue comes when the teacher gives questions that are different on the test, like gives like a challenge, a very challenging math word problem. Mercury doesn't know what to do in that situation because all he's done is memorize facts. But Jupiter knows where, even if this question is completely different, he knows where to apply the equations and he knows where the question is going. So that's how brilliant this Jupiter is, that he can learn something and apply it to 100 different things because he's got this knowledge. He'll be like, if he learns some equation in like a physics class, he'd be like, oh, we can apply like this knowledge to this could go with computer science as well. This could actually also work in like electrical engineering type of classes, right? So that's what makes Jupiter very brilliant and also separates it from Venus, because Venus has looked at the procedure very carefully, and um, it takes Venus a lot more time. When the question completely changes, it takes Venus has to modify its steps. Now Venus could still solve these questions, Jupiter and Venus both, when like your teacher throws like very like difficult, challenging questions on a test. Venus and Jupiter are the only ones who could solve this. Um, and they do it in different ways because Jupiter knows the overall concept, and Venus uh, knows the concept, like all the details and the numbers. That Venus also knows where to modify the knowledge to solve this question. So yeah, I would say Jupiter and Venus are the planets that do the best here, but your spouse is a genius and they're very wise with their knowledge. Um, yeah, and these are the people too, again, they do take some time. Like Mercury and Mars pick up knowledge way faster. Actually, even Venus picks things up faster, but I think Jupiter has the deepest knowledge in the subject than any other planets here. And I think that gives Jupiter like such a powerful advantage. Um, so yeah, they'll actually astound you to your spouse. They'll astound you with how intelligent they are, because it's like, you know, let's say if they watch the same YouTube video, like here I'm talking about placements of planets. If your spouse has Jupiter in in this placement, they'd understand all the exceptions and all the rules that I'm saying here. Like they know what happens uh if Rahu, Saturn, and like Mercury are conjunct with this Jupiter. They have a thorough understanding of every like of the science so deeply that they don't need to ask questions. They they know how everything works individually and could piece it together. So Jupiter is brilliance. brilliant, brilliant planet here. And your spouse, it will blow you away with how smart they are. Especially true if Jupiter exalted. Actually, if Jupiter is exalted, uh, they use their knowledge to help other people. These are not the type of people who are like smart, but they won't tell you their trick or how they do it. These are people who they want everybody else to succeed. So yeah. So that's Jupiter exalted here, or Jupiter in its own sign. Okay, Saturn. Okay, so right off the bat, Saturn here, they have a very different way of learning than all the other planets. So one thing, like there's actually good, like both good and bad here. And yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily say that it's bad either. Because I kind of like this combination. So what happens here, these people don't like school. They don't like how it works. These people hate presentations in school. Like they would rather just, be alone. They'd be like, "Can't you just make us write an essay or something instead? Like, why do we have to do this presentation?" That's these guys. They don't like that stuff. And these people, like, yeah, they weren't fond of school. They weren't fond too much of like they don't have too many like powerful memories. Like there are some people who have like such good memories that like last their entire lifetime of school. But these people, they like once they're done school, they don't really think about it. They're like, okay, it's done now. Let me move on to the next chapter of life. So that's what these guys say. And something that I think Saturn really gets right here is that Saturn doesn't really agree with the way that the school systems are being taught because in the school systems you're just kind of memorizing knowledge. Like a lot of your subjects are just memorization based. Like think about like history or geography, right? These a lot of those type of things, it's just like memorize certain facts, right? Like when was this person born and whatnot. And Saturn doesn't really see a point to this. Saturn here, your spouse would much prefer knowledge that's practical and that they could use hands-on instead. Like they they don't care for like learning about like quantum physics because to them it's like how could they practically use this? And if they can't practically use it, they'll consider it useless. So they would say like the best type of knowledge is knowledge that you could apply to your everyday life or that you could actually use. And um, yeah, the way that they prefer learning is not, sitting at a desk watching a teacher write stuff on the board. They actually say that the best way to learn is by experience. And I actually 100% agree with Saturn here that people actually learn things and retain the information a lot better through experience than anything else. You know, like that thing where you could tell a kid like 100 times not to touch a hot stove. But I mean, if that kid touches the stove one time, he'll never forget that information. He'll now know why his parents are saying not to touch that stove, right? So one experience teaches you more things than any book or any lecture could tell you, right? So Saturn also here considers learning from mistakes very precious. And it's for the same reason that it's like through making a lot of mistakes, like you learn where things go wrong, and from learning how things go wrong, you also learn the things that work, right? So that you learn the things that don't work and then the things that do work. and then you never forget it because you never want to repeat a mistake. So that's where Saturn is. Saturn has a very different way of learning than the other planets. And the only reason these people don't like school or may not do well in school is because that school doesn't support Saturn's way of learning. Now, this doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. It actually just means that um, like they should be learning a different way. If they learn in their own Saturn way and through like hands-on things, they would be very brilliant. But that's usually not how school does things. You're kind of just at a desk, right? So yeah, that's Saturn. And I would say like there's a lot of wisdom to these people. Um, Actually, you know what? Even these people, like your spouse, they're the type of person who instead of like uh instead of reading, let's say they have to assemble like a desk, instead of reading the instruction manual, these people would like to tinker with it and try to assemble it on their own based on what they know about tables and desks. So they would try it on their own and they don't mind making mistakes here. And actually, they probably will make a few mistakes while doing it, but this is what makes Saturn very powerful is that Saturn, from these mistakes, and this experience, Saturn would learn things that no other planet would learn. So even if he has, let's say he put like one of the legs of the desk or table wrong, and he has to undo his work, he's learned a lot from this experience. So yeah, I would, and this is what I would say, like that's Saturn in a nutshell, is learning through experience. Um, so yeah, I really don't consider Saturn bad here, and I actually do support how Saturn learns, and I think Saturn's really got a point here that we should probably learn a bit more hands-on things and from experience rather than being told that this is how the world works. We should experience the world and then have our own opinion about how the world works. Right? So that's how Saturn has its own wisdom, and that's how your spouse will think, and that's how they'll think about school. Another interesting thing about this Saturn here, whatever school that your spouse went to, either the school wouldn't be a good condition, or it'll be a very old school. Either like an old school or a school that's kind of run down or in a neighborhood where it's not being like cleaned or was it renovated? Those type of things. So that's the type of school that's your spouse could go to. This is especially true if Saturn's in its own sign. And actually, something that makes Saturn brilliant here is if Saturn and Jupiter are both together. This is one of my favorite combinations, but again, they're not gonna like school, but they'd have more wisdom than anybody else. Though it would take time because these are both very slow moving planets. So it takes them more time to learn this, but by time they're 40 and 50, they're wiser than 90% of the population. If you have this, some type of Saturn Jupiter connection. Like even if Jupiter aspects or if Saturn's in Jupiter signs, Saturn, as long as Saturn's receiving some of Jupiter's energy, this makes a person extremely wise. So yeah, that's Saturn. Now Rahu. So Rahu, Rahu, the rebellious planet here. When Rahu sits here, these are the type of people who would love for the school to burn down. Like they, yeah, these are the people who they always get excited whenever there's like fire drills in your school because they get interrupted in the middle of class for like a fire drill and have to go outside and they're like, "Oh yeah, we get to miss like, 10, 15 minutes of whatever this teacher is teaching us about." Right? So that's their attitude about school. They these are people who don't typically take school that seriously. In the sense like they're not the person who's studying 24/7. I mean, they're probably more so studying like 15 minutes max. Like that's how fast they'll do it. Like they'll only do their homework just so that they don't get in trouble, but actually most of the time they probably won't even do their homework. The they'll probably like fake their numbers or whatever on their tests or on their homework just to make it look like they got it done. They don't, yeah, so they don't really have an affinity for school. But something that's interesting here is that these people are extremely clever, and it's exactly Rahu who's the type of person to study something like 10 minutes before a test and still get like a 95 or 100% on the test. Because these people, when they read something, let's say they read a textbook or they read your notes, they already get the idea of what is going on here. So they're able to skim through the notes and go through it quickly and absorb the knowledge quickly. So yeah, that's these people. That's their attitude here. Now, again, Rahu has to be in a good position for that to happen. Like Rahu has to be either in Gemini or Taurus or Libra for this to happen. Yeah, any Mercury or Venus signs. Like even in Virgo, man, Rahu and Mercury signs, there you wouldn't believe how fast and how quick these people are with their mind. Like your spouse will catch on to things so fast. Now, they're not going to have a very powerful foundation for the knowledge, but they would catch on and, you know, uh, like if you show them half of a math equation, they could finish it because they could look at the first half and be like, okay, I see where you're going with this. And I've seen something like this before. So I think this is where you're going. And they'll finish off based on that. Right? So extremely quick. Though again, they're not the type of person to like school. They would actually rather have any excuse to get out of school. These are also not the type of people who want to do like much schooling like after high school. So like they don't really want to go to college or university. I mean, if they have to, then they will, but it's not their style to do to do something like that. Um, so yeah. So that's Rahu, incredibly brilliant and quick. But the examples I was saying is if Saturn sits with Rahu, then this is not a good combination for school. And even in terms of intelligence, they're going to catch on to things like very very slowly. Um, like you should ask them. They would have had a lot of stories about school, of like how much they hated school or like a lot of issues that happened in school. If there's any type of Saturn Rahu combination. So yeah, this type of combination is not uh favorable for school, I would say. Okay. Last up is Ketu. So these people they're smart, but something that's interesting is that in school they would often blank out. Like they would be listening to the teacher talk about, whatever they're talking about, and then they would just blank out or start daydreaming in the middle of what the teacher is saying. So if you would ask them like how school was and that type of stuff, they would say that, oh yeah, they were kind of like lost in the sauce like half the time. Um, their head was in the clouds. They were just, daydreaming the whole time. So that's what I would say about it. And you know what? These people, what I've noticed, they very a lot of the time they don't have too many memories of school. Like they most likely didn't take too many pictures while at school um or they don't have like too many stories about school. Like they would just say like school was like yeah, just whatever. Like school just kind of happened and then it kind of, you know, it just remains as a memory, which and not even much of a memory. They're barely going to have much of it, memory of, or recollection of what happened. A lot of times, if their friends would say like, "Oh, do you remember that time that this and this happened in school? That this teacher got so angry they got fired or whatever," they they this person would be like, "Oh no, I didn't even know that happened." So you see, like it's because they're daydreaming or that's their head is in the cloud a lot that they're unaware of a lot of what happens in school. Now, something that's interesting is that these people also are very good at trigonometry. Like if there is a part in school that they liked, it's dealing with the triangles and all that stuff with like the angles, like this type of thing. This angle and this angle are the same as long as this guy and this guy. Like this type of thing, they would love doing mathematics like this. Um, and all that stuff with like sine and cosine. Um, you know, like with these right angle triangles they'd be very much interested. They would like doing this stuff. Anything with like, you know, sine sine X, for example. They love this type of stuff and angles in school. Assuming that K2 is in generally some good positions. Like if K2's in Scorpio or with Saturn, then that's not true. They're not gonna like trigonometry. But if K2's with Mercury or sitting in one of Mercury's signs, Gemini or Virgo, then yeah, then they would like trigonometry. So yeah, these people, in terms of intelligence, yeah, they are intelligent. Um, but it's just again that they blank out a lot. And part of the reason for this is because Ketu is a headless planet. So sometimes like thoughts just kind of come in and then go out. Or like when people are talking to them, the words come in one ear and then come out the other ear. That's very much what happens with these guys. So yeah, these are also the type of people who would like learn things the day before the test and then just kind of get it over with. These are not the type of people who spend hours or days working on like studying for tests. That's just not in their nature. Um so yeah, um yeah, so that's K2. And that is all planets in this 11th house of your D9. If you have any questions, you can leave your comments down below. And if you would like to know every single detail about your spouse, you could check out the link in the description for a consultation. Currently, everything's almost 50% off. So you could check those out for a consultation. And please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And thank you.